Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Hi, folks, and thank you for being with us today as we once again reload and get ready to fire for the next 3 hours. Here are the EIB Network, Rush Limbaugh. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. And if you want to send an email, I check them. It's lrushbo@eibnet.us. Okay, so the FBI report was delivered to Chuck Grassley. Grassley said, hey, there's nothing new in this. Everything in this we knew, which was imminently predictable. They still haven't. The FBI was unable to corroborate anything any of the witnesses have said, folks. Any of the allegations that witnesses have made. They haven't been able to corroborate Ballsy Ford's testimony. They weren't able to corroborate Ramirez. They weren't able to corroborate Swetnick. They weren't able to corroborate it. This is now the 7th FBI investigation into Brett Kavanaugh. The left is out there saying, but they didn't talk to Dr. Ford, and they didn't talk to Kavanaugh. That's right. That's not part of the deal. They testified under oath. What more can the FBI learn? Do you think the FBI really thinks that these people are going to change their stories from what they've testified to under oath? Besides that, Dr. Ford's testimony changed anyway in terms of the timeline. But the reason the FBI didn't talk to Ford or Kavanaugh is because they've talked to Kavanaugh for how many times over how many years. But they testified under oath. And so the thinking is no reason to talk to them. You go out and talk to people they claim can corroborate what they're saying. The FBI couldn't find any. So I'm watching CNN today. I've got CNN and Fox on in here. And it was probably 10 minutes ago, 10 minutes before the program started. And I began to get the impression that the Democrats think they've lost. Because a little CNN reporter, only looks little to me, he was describing Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake said, this is very thorough. This investigation is very, very satisfying to me. And the CNN reporter said, Jeff Flake today actually sounded like a Republican. And that presents a problem. Jeff Flake is sounding like a Republican. Last Friday, he sounded like a Democrat, but today he's sounding like a Republican. Then they went to Susan Collins. Susan Collins says, hey, I look at this. I'm very satisfied. This is a very thorough report and investigation. So it looks like Flake and Collins are in line. The vote has been called. Cloture vote was filed last night by the Turtle, who was on fire again today, just moments ago, on the floor of the Senate. For him, he was on fire. We have the audio sound bites of this coming up. I'm still waiting for James Comey. Has anybody heard from James Comey praising the FBI on their investigation here? Another way we know this is over? Trump-Russia collusion news is back. Yeah, yesterday... Yesterday, there was some other story that surfaced. Oh, Trump's tax returns. That told me that the drive-bys thought they were near the end of their abilities on Kavanaugh. But apparently, this is a story from John Solomon. Collusion bombshell. Democrat National Committee lawyers met with the FBI on Russia allegations before the surveillance warrant on Carter Page. Congressional investigators have confirmed that a top FBI official met with Democrat Party lawyers to talk about allegations of Donald Trump-Russia collusion weeks before the 2016 election and before the Bureau secured the famous FISA search warrant targeting Carter Page. Former FBI General Counsel James Baker met during the 2016 campaign with at least one lawyer from Perkins Coie, the Democrat National Committee's private law firm. This is the firm that provided the cutout to pay Christopher Steele for the Steele-Trump dossier. So now we've got confirmation that the Democrat National Committee lawyers were in on this smear of Trump by talking with FBI officials as they hatched their plan to go get a FISA warrant to surveil Carter Page, and thus, surveilling Carter Page means surveilling the Trump campaign. Catherine Herridge at Fox News has confirmed it. She's reporting that sources familiar with congressional investigation tell Fox that a lawyer for the DNC Clinton campaign was the previously unknown source providing evidence to the FBI Russia probe in 2016. James Baker, the FBI, a lawyer at Perkins Coie. So when this news starts to appear, and then we got the mayor of New York, that Bill de Blasio, we're gonna turn over every rock. We're gonna turn over every rock to find every dollar Trump owes the city of New York that he hasn't paid. But has anybody heard, has James Comey come out and praised the FBI investigation here that's taken place in the last 6 days? Anybody heard anything about that? Still nothing from Comey praising the great work of the FBI. Is that right? NPR, this is big news out here today. Look, yeah. I've got Feinstein and Schumer at the microphones. The funny thing to me, Schumer didn't hang around for questions. He wanted to make 3 points. Feinstein's out there talking, and Schumer's chomping at the bit, standing right next to her. He just wants to sweep her off the stage, get to the microphones, and say what he wants to say and get out of there. You know what point he tried to make? Because McConnell, the turtle, during his floor speech today, really chastised the Democrats for these needless delays. And Schumer said, we didn't delay, Madam President, we didn't delay. Any delay that has happened here has been because either the chairman of the committee or the leader of the Republicans has wanted a delay. But we're not responding because we don't run the committee and we don't run the Senate. And so we can't have been responsible for any delay. Of course they are responsible for the delay. Ultimately, Schumer's right. I mean, the Republicans could have told him to go pound sand at each and every time that they demanded another week. But everything's falling into place. Everything as predicted. We predicted that the Democrats wouldn't be satisfied with what they asked for. They asked for an additional week of FBI investigation. They got it. Immediately after getting it, they said a week wouldn't be long enough. Then we predicted that whatever the FBI comes back and says, the Democrats are going to say it's tainted because they didn't do a thorough enough investigation, didn't talk to everything that we predicted is coming to pass on the Democrat side. Now, as to the blue wave, purple wave, red wave, and this kind of thing, NPR has a poll out there just over a month away from critical elections across the fruited plain. The wide Democrat enthusiasm advantage that has defined the 2018 campaign up to this point has disappeared, according to an NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll. Now, for this to be true, then it also has to be true that the previous polls were accurate. What did you tell me before the program? Cruz is now up 7 over Beto O'Rourke, and that you seem surprised by that. Why? 2 or 3 weeks ago, Cruz was tied with Beto O'Rourke. Is a certain. What if they never were tied? What if that was just polling data flim-flam? What if that was nothing more than polling flummery? What if Cruz never has trailed? You know my theory about polling. They use it to shape public opinion, and you get close to the election, they have to start changing it to have it close to accurate so that when the election's over, they're not totally discredited. None of this polling data surprises me. I have never thought the Democrats had a 12-point advantage in the generic ballot in House races, but everybody goes with it because that's the only polling data you have. The point is in the NPR poll, NPR Marist PBS NewsHour, the Democrat generic ballot advantage has gone from 12% to 2%. That's in the margin of error. That is a wash. The Democrats have lost 2 points in this poll, and it is related to Kavanaugh. There is a backlash happening against Kavanaugh. There is a backlash happening against the behavior of the Democrats, but more importantly, a a backlash against these really insane lunatic protester supporters they have. Harassing people, doxing people. A former intern for Sheila Jackson Lee and Feinstein, and this guy is 27 years old, and he worked for All Women. He's the guy that revealed all the public information, names, addresses, phone numbers of Republican senators so that protesters could harass them. And the protesters did indeed harass. One of them even showed up and beat up Rand Paul in his front yard, attacking him from the rear. Well, let's go to the audio sound bites on this NPR business. We'll start here at the top. Number one, NPR is back translating me for their audience. This is last night, all things considered, a portion of a report by the NPR White House correspondent Tamara Keith about Trump's comments expressing concerns about allegations of sexual harassment and assault against Kavanaugh and other men. And I've got a point to make about that again. Hang on. Here we go. I think it's hatred of men, and I said this.
Rush Limbaugh has been railing against so-called feminazis for decades, to much commercial success.
We're so out of balance here. Women, activist feminazi women, can demand all kinds of investigations into men. Men cannot require or demand investigations into women. You imagine if somebody tried that?
That was from his show today.
Men are under investigation in this country, be it through Kavanaugh or through Trump or whoever.
The idea being that men are under siege, as women have taken more prominent roles in the workplace, as demographic and cultural shifts have changed the rules.
So next, they went over to Frank Luntz, the king of focus group research, to ask and have him explain how and why all of this is firing up the GOP base.
It's something President Trump tapped into as a candidate, with his talk of forgotten men and political correctness run amok, says Frank Luntz.
The idea that you can't say things that you believe to be true, that you can't think the way you once thought 10 or 20 years ago because there's something wrong with it.
And now, as Trump tweeted today, there is an anger among some at how Kavanaugh has been treated. Luntz notes that partisans seek to gain advantage from the open wound that was the Kavanaugh hearing.
It has been used by some to try to energize the white conservative male to say, hey, look, now you're the victim.
Okay, so here's NPR doing a report starting out railing against me and my comments, predictions about the feminazis. And then they go to Frank Luntz, and Frank Luntz explains to them why there might be a little backlash occurring, not just among men, but among people on the right in general. And now here is the payoff. NPR went out, they polled it themselves, and they found that exactly what I have been saying has come to pass. The Kavanaugh hearings are backfiring big time on the Democrats.
An NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll out today found a big swing in public opinion among men following the hearing, with a 10-point increase in those saying they plan to support a Republican candidate in the upcoming midterm elections.
Right. Now, so this is happening, and the only primary change or difference here has been the Kavanaugh hearings and the left's reaction to it. I've even seen stories today among never-Trumper conservatives that this whole thing may actually reunite the conservative movement. Well, we'll see about that, but clearly there is a reaction, isn't it? It's root level simple. This is so easily understood. It is the worst smear campaign many people have ever seen in their lives. Many people, even as Lindsey Graham found out the other day, there are a lot of people today that have no idea that Hillary Clinton ran an operation to destroy women who surfaced saying that her husband, Bill Clinton, had abused them or raped them or mistreated them or what have you. Lindsey Graham talks about what James Carville said when you drag a dollar bill through a trailer park and he got booed because the millennials in the crowd had no idea that that's who Hillary Clinton was. The same token, those people have not lived through Robert Bork, and many of them were not old enough to remember what happened to Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill, so this is their first. And that means it is the worst smear campaign ever that they've seen. Could anyone be smeared more? Can anybody be smeared more than Brett Kavanaugh has been smeared? We think that it can't get worse, but the left will always make it worse. Kavanaugh has been smeared unlike anybody since Clarence Thomas. But he's been vindicated, too. He's been vindicated by facts. He's been vindicated by evidence. He's been vindicated by witness corroboration. 7 different FBI investigations. He is vindicated by a life well lived. When you boil all this down, I think it's going to be really hard for any Republican to vote against the guy. And in fact, I don't know this, but I wouldn't be surprised if some Democrats, Senate Democrats, are privately behind the scenes urging recalcitrant Republicans to go ahead and vote for Kavanaugh because the way this is backfiring on them. Don't know that. It's a wild guess, and only time will tell when we get to the vote. But the FBI investigation that the Democrats wanted appears to have provided cover for both Susan Collins and Jeff Flake. We don't know where Murkowski is on any of this yet. And, of course, there's some red state Democrat senators that now have a big decision to make. So we're off and running here on yet another 3-hour excursion into broadcast excellence, which will continue before you know it. An NPR reporter just tweeted that Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats are filing out of Chuck Schumer's office stone-faced. The meaning is they're coming out, then they're depressed. There are no expressions on their faces. They're not happy. They're stone-faced. They're shell-shocked. There's something or other. Now, why would that be? Why? Well, did the Democrats on that committee actually believe Christine Ford? Did they really believe what she was saying? So I don't know how anybody could. Honestly, folks, I'm not even being partisan when I say this. She can't remember where, when, why. The people she says were there weren't there, and yet these Democrats all believe. Further, did the Democrats in that committee really think that an FBI investigation of another 5 or 6 days was going to somehow produce corroborating evidence that would wipe out the Kavanaugh nomination? They really thought that? Because my thinking all along has been they've known that this nothing other than delay. This is all this has been. It's all they've got. If they really thought that this FBI investigation was going to find something that 6 previous investigations and countless other interviews and written questions hadn't produced, well, that is shocking. Honest to God, I know I'm sometimes naive, but I thought this has been a scam from the get-go and that they're all in on the scam and that the scam was delay, hence the late release of Dr. Ford's letter detailing all of this. So they walk out of Schumer's office and they're all stone-faced. Maybe they thought that they had Flake, and maybe they thought they were going to get Collins. But Collins and Flake have come out, and what they have said so far, remember, the vote's not going to be till Saturday now, so anything can change. Do not think the Democrats have scraped the bottom of the barrel or the gutter in efforts to thwart this. They've still got till Saturday. But they walk out of there stone-faced. Maybe they actually thought they were going to stop this with an additional FBI investigation. At any rate, let's be right back. As we knew would happen, the FBI report has begun to leak now. And we find out that the FBI really focused in the last 5 days on just the latest allegations that had come forward, which makes sense. Everything prior to that had already been vetted. And it turns out that they did interview Mark Judge for 3 hours. Some in the media were saying that the FBI wasn't even going to try to talk to Mark Judge. He is the guy that the Democrats on the committee thought they could turn. They thought they could get to Mark Judge and get him to admit that he and Kavanaugh did indeed do whatever they supposedly did to Blasey Ford. They interviewed him for 3 hours. He did not corroborate anything she said. They talked to Ramirez. but she's upset they didn't talk to her enough. They talked to people over the last few days regarding, I think, something like 5 or 6 of the most recent allegations. They found nothing corroborating. Their report goes up to the Senate, and a lot of Republicans look at it and think, man, this is really thorough because of the people that were talked to, the people that were interviewed, and there wasn't anything corroborating. There wasn't a thing. I still haven't heard from James Comey praising this particular FBI investigation. Still waiting for that. We have the news that the Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats walked out of Senator Schumer's office stone-faced. Maybe he had polling data for him. Maybe he showed him the NPR poll. Maybe he showed him some Democrat internal polling. This isn't working out the way the Democrats had planned. You know, they live and die by their own polling. They believe it. It's a Bible to them. Even to the extent that they know how it's rigged and used, they believe it because they believe polling is always done in their favor. And to see this generic ballot advantage vanish in a Marist poll with NPR, to go from plus 12 to plus 2, which is statistical margin of error, they have been, in their minds, and this is crucial to understand, in their minds, they have been running the House. It's all but formal. All we need is to have the election. Pelosi's telling herself she's Speaker again. She's out there telling everybody she's going to be Speaker. Every other Democrat thinks they're going to run the House. It's just a matter of time passing. Just a matter of time. Just got to get to the election day itself, and Hillary Clinton's going to be president. They're in the same mindset again, and then they're brought into Schumer's office, and they see something that conflicts with this wonderful story they've been telling themselves, and they walk out stone-faced. It's also possible stone-faced is an act. It's also stone-faced as an act designed to create a certain false reaction amongst observers watching. But I don't know. In this case, I think they've been so convinced that they were going to get rid of Kavanaugh when they got that 1-week additional FBI investigation. I think that alone they thought was going to make sure that Collins and Flake did not vote for Kavanaugh, and maybe Murkowski. And if that can happen, then they wouldn't need any of their red state Democrats to vote for Kavanaugh, be at risk. But it looks like there's this pretty big backlash out there against Democrats. And now, guess what? There's this massive protest going on at the U.S. District Court, the Court of Appeals where Kavanaugh currently serves as a judge. A massive anti-Kavanaugh protest. And guess who one of the leaders of it is? Does the name Linda Sarsour ring a bell? Linda Sarsour is a PLO activist in the United States. She is a far-left activist. She dabbles in women's rights as well. She's one of the leaders. I think Norman Lear is there and some other celebrities. But it's not going to be doing them any good to have a PLO activist appearing to lead this protest against Kavanaugh. Also, I want to make one other point here before we venture further into even more detail about the latest developments. One of the preeminent, most noteworthy Never Trump senators is Ben Sasse of Nebraska. And in fact, let me find the Sasse soundbite. I know it's near the end. Grab audio soundbite number 20. There is an intense competition amongst Never Trumpers in Washington over who will become the next McCain, who will become the next conscience of the Never Trumpers, who will become the next conscience of whatever the Never Trumpers think Trump doesn't have, that they do have, that the Republican Party needs to reclaim. And here is what Ben Sasse said last night on the Senate floor.
We all know that the president cannot lead us through this time. We know that he's dispositionally unable to restrain his impulse to divide us. His mockery of Dr. Ford last night in Mississippi was wrong, but it doesn't really surprise anyone. It's who he is.
Mr. Sasse, Senator Sasse, I have an alternative view, and I'm not going to presume that you're listening, but maybe somebody who knows you is. I need you to consider something, Senator Sasse. You and numerous others say that President Trump mocked Dr. Ford in his rally, South Haven, Mississippi, earlier this week. And then you suggest that Trump knows what he's doing. Despite all the criticism he gets, that he's doing this, it's who he is. He can't help it. Mr. Sass, I think it's the other way around. I think Trump knows exactly what he's doing. I think Trump has a behavioral pattern, a strategic behavior. It's called pacing. And let me briefly explain it again in setting up what's to come next. When President Trump originally spoke about Dr. Ford, what did he say? Compelling testimony. Riveting. He couldn't turn away from it. If she's telling the truth, Kavanaugh's gone. He's got no prayer. If Kavanaugh's lied in his testimony, he's gone. Trump said all of this, and everybody said, wow, this is really unusual for Trump. No, it's not unusual. Trump gets himself on record. Not every time, but in many issues, he gets himself on record in the approved Washington establishment way. And every time he does it, do not some of you panic. Maybe you don't anymore. But when he first started doing this, like Paris Climate Accords, yeah, there may be something here. We're going to look at it. Oh, no, he's going to cave. Oh, no. Doesn't matter. You can remember countless times where the president's initial statement on an issue has seemed to dovetail with what the swamp thinks. But then a few days or a week go by, and the president becomes who he is, and he starts speaking out against it after he's put himself on the record. He does this for credibility, and he does it. It's something called pacing. And it relaxes the opposition in any number of ways. He's doing the same thing here with Dr. Ford. He knew right off the bat that she was saying things that nobody could corroborate, that nobody could prove, that she couldn't prove. And what he did on Monday night was not mock her. He explained to everybody the truth about her. Everybody, because of what Trump did at that rally, everybody was forced to look and listen to that little riff on Dr. Ford's shaky, uncorroborated, unprovable testimony. The drive-bys were never going to tell the truth about Dr. Ford. The drive-bys were not able to ignore the rally. They tried. Not even Fox televised Trump's rally. But because he said what he said about her, he forced the drive-bys to cover what he said. In the process, the drive-bys reported what he said, and people like Ben Sass and others started, get me the vapors, get me the vapors. Oh, my God, Trump is over. This is horrible. This is inhumane. He's not fit. What Donald Trump did, recounting the absurd inconsistencies in her testimony, Donald Trump calling her out on everything, has been played now on all media. It was all day yesterday. Reporters are now asking senators and the press secretary questions about it in the press briefing yesterday. The fact is the drive-by media did not report the inaccuracies of Dr. Ford's testimony. The drive-by media did not report on none of the corroboration being possible. They did not tell their audiences that the 4 people Ford placed in the room when her incident happened claimed they weren't there. Nobody knew that, folks, other than you. But people that watch the mainstream media had no idea that Dr. Ford couldn't back up what she was saying. The people that watch the mainstream media had no idea that the 4 witnesses Ford claims were there all deny it and don't remember being there. And one of them was one of her good friends. The drive-bys were not reporting any of that. The drive-bys were reporting what the Democrat senators, I believe her. She is a credible witness. As far as the American people who watch only mainstream media is concerned, the woman was telling the truth. The head backup, she had corroboration, and Kavanaugh was guilty. So Trump goes out, tells the truth about her. She doesn't know what, she doesn't know when, she doesn't know where, she doesn't know how she got home. She gets it on the record. The drive-bys have to report it, and for the first time in their lives, people who watch mainstream media actually heard it. Look at it this way. Think of the millions of people who had never heard the truth about Dr. Christine Ford and her full of holes testimony. Think of the millions who'd never heard it until Trump went out and characterized it for everybody. Think of it this way. Think of the thousands of voters in Missouri, in Arizona, in Michigan and Maine and West Virginia, North Dakota, Alaska, who now know the truth, who never would have known the truth had Trump not detailed it for people in his rally. Collins, Manchin, Heitkamp, McCaskill, Flake, Murkowski, they knew that there was no corroboration. They knew that there couldn't have been any truth to what she was saying by virtue of witnesses. This is why Trump did it. This is why Trump does what he does. If we had an honest media, millions of people would already know that Dr. Ford's story doesn't add up. If the media ever told the truth about this, there wouldn't be any protests today, or not nearly as large and voluminous. The people at these protests think she's telling the God's truth. They think it's gospel. They don't know that her story can't be backed up. Their media hasn't told them. The Democrat senators haven't told them. Only Trump did. It's another reason why they hate him. But we don't have an honest media. And so millions of people had no idea of all the holes in the Christine Ballsy Ford story. Now they do. And here's a little cherry on top. Since Trump did that, and the whole media reported on it, and Democrat senators and the like were asked about it, what comes 3 days later? Today's FBI report saying no corroboration for what Dr. Ford said. So Trump says it. People like Ben Sass and other never-Trumpers go literally insane. But if Trump hadn't said it, nobody would know it. But Trump did say it. Millions now do know it. And here comes the cherry on the top, the FBI report. We couldn't find any corroboration for her story. End of the week, Trump was right. Drive-by media wrong. Democrat senators wrong. Ben Sass wrong. And Trump doesn't do this accidentally. It's not like he's lucky and stumbles into this stuff. This is Trump's strategy, and it's all related to the pacing of how he eventually, I should say, gets to his real thoughts on any issue. Brief timeout now. Back with more in a moment. Half my brain tied behind my back, as always, just to make it fair. And going to go to the phones here, folks. I'm not going to let an hour and a half go by without doing that today. And we're going to start in Marietta, Georgia. This is Scott. He is in his late 30s, he says. I imagine that's relevant for what he's going to say. How you doing, sir?
Good. Thank you for taking my call, sir. I appreciate it.
You bet.
So I just wanted to express, first of all, my political affiliation is I've never really been too involved in the political scene until these last couple years. I've always seen the argument, both sides of the table, a lot of times, but recently in the past few years, I've just the absolute disgust of what the left is doing and their tactics. And I've never registered to vote. I've never really had too strong of an opinion, but literally seconds after I saw Kavanaugh's opening statement, I went straight to register.
You know, now I find this fascinating. I always try to make it a point to understand that not everybody is into this like I am. I find it hard to do that sometimes because it seems that since all of this is about so much of how we're going to live in this country, that I wish more people did pay attention to it and learned a little bit more about it. And it's one of the purposes for the show. This is a great anecdotal example. You're a guy out there, you're living your life. This stuff is on the periphery to you, probably because it irritates you when you do pay attention to it. But something caused you to get over the hump. Something caused you, in this case, the Kavanaugh testimony and in the hearing, something caused you to say, you know, this is worth my attention. This is worth me getting involved. Is that right? Is that pretty much it?
100%. And I think it's especially a maturity thing as well. Understanding, like you're saying, that our votes have implications and that it does matter. And this just, it disgusted me to my core. I got emotional listening to him. I'm sure as millions of not just people, but men my age especially, did listening to that. And, it's just amazing to me to see the tactics that's going on in this country.
So you're going to go register to vote?
I already did. I did it instantly. Yes, sir, online.
Well, welcome.
Voting in the midterms, especially, and I guarantee you I'm not the only person in this country that's doing that, and I think the media is going to get it wrong, way wrong again, because this silent majority is real and it's out there for sure.
Well, I think that there are probably a lot of people like you. It's hard to know scientifically or statistically. That's why we have to treat your conversion here as an anecdotal one-time example. But I think the Democrats are worried about this. I really think that they constantly misjudge and believe that they represent the majority of thinking in this country. I think they really believe that a majority of Americans hate conservatives and everything about them and conservatism. And I think they think they're relating to a majority of Americans. And when they're hit with the reality that may not be the case, and I think they're seeing that now, then it's time to circle the wagons and try to limit the damage. The real key for them is going to be polling data on suburban women. If they're having similar kind of backlash to you, then that's gonna scare the wits out of them. And I think that is happening too. Okay, folks, another brief break here at the top of the hour. We'll get organized for our next hour's excursion into broadcast excellence, which will feature your phone calls. I got to make up for yesterday. With more polling data out there that looks promising to boots. It's all coming up. The views and opinions expressed by the host of this program, not necessarily those of the staff, management, or sponsors of this station, but they ought to be, and in time will be. The views expressed by the host on this program are documented to be almost always right 99.8% of the time. Another opinion audit for my opinion auditing firm in Rancho Cordova, California. The Sullivan Group just arrived. No change, which is pretty amazing. And so you're up to 99.8. I mean, how do you do better than that? I mean, you got to be right for like years to move it up to 0.9. So it's good news. Phone number 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Just a little polling data here. Fox News has a poll out, which shows that in 3 key battleground states for the upcoming midterms, Democrat voter enthusiasm is dropping. Back between September 8th and 11th, in Indiana, Democrat voter enthusiasm was 41%, now down to 39%. In Missouri, September 8 to 11, it was 44%, down to 42% now. In Tennessee, Democrat voter enthusiasm was 47%. This is the number Democrats are going to turn out. 47% back in early September, 38% now. That's a 9-point drop in Tennessee. On the Republican side, Republican enthusiasm in the same 3 states is increasing. In Indiana, it's gone from 32% to 41%. In Missouri, 36% to 44%. And in Tennessee, 33 to 44%. So the numbers now, 41 to 39 Republican Indiana, 44-42 Republican Missouri, 44-38 Republican Tennessee. That's a Fox News poll in just 3 states. One of the people interviewed by the FBI in this most recent report is this Deborah Ramirez. Now, Ramirez, you know what? I can't even remember what. I'm getting her confused. Is she Avenatti's client? No, Avenatti's client. Who is the gang rape? Avenatti's client. What was her name? Swetnick. That's right. So this is Ramirez. This is. Anyway, she was interviewed by the FBI. And the latest Ronan Farrow report further discredits her Kavanaugh allegation. Just to recap, before she fingered Kavanaugh, Ramirez was telling classmates she could not be certain it was Kavanaugh. She now admits that her drinking that night clouded her memory on whatever it was she alleged Kavanaugh to be doing. Only after 6 days of talking to her lawyer, a Democrat politician, was Ramirez able to remember it was Kavanaugh. Every single one of Ramirez's so-called witness sides with Kavanaugh. The only so-called corroboration Ramirez had was a guy who heard about the incident from somebody else. That someone else says he has no memory of the incident. Ramirez is a Democrat activist. Wednesday's New Yorker piece, trying to back her up, is a blatant piece of left-wing activism. But it ends up that Ronan Farrow's report further discredits her allegation in the end, and she was talked to by the FBI. She was one of the people talked to, as was Mike Judge, for 3 hours. The Democrats thought Mike Judge was going to spill his guts and Mark Judge, right, was going to spill his guts and convict Kavanaugh. He didn't. And neither did Ramirez. The FBI. So these two people, the FBI talks to them. These are the people the Democrats wanted. Mark Judge, they kept saying all last week at the hearing last Thursday. And then Ramirez, and the FBI talks to them. They submit the report. I'm sorry, says the report, but there's no corroboration here. So Flake looks at it. No corroboration. Susan Collins looks at it. Wow, this is really thorough. No corroboration. CNN reporter, right before 12 noon today, reporting on Flake and Collins, is very distressed, reporting that Flake is once again acting like a Republican, once again sounding like a Republican. The CNN info babe, to who he was speaking, I think it was Kate Baldwin, said, well, we've got until Saturday noon to change things. We've got until Saturday noon. Not they've got. We've got. Fox News poll also says Republicans are making gains in key Senate races as well. New round of Fox News Battleground poll shows a Republican trend in the fight for the Senate. The Republican candidates are helped by increased interest in the election among Republicans and pro-Trump sentiment. Really? Why, we've been led to believe that Kavanaugh, being a gang rapist, attempted murderer, and worse, was wildly unpopular. I guess this proved the Republican base it doesn't prove any of this sort. It proves people aren't buying the allegations against Kavanaugh on the Republican side. Now, a good friend of mine, Ben Stein. Ben Stein grew up essentially in the Nixon White House. His father was the Council of Economic Advisors head honcho for Nixon. And Ben Stein is an independent, he's a Hollywood actor, producer, writer, raconteur. He writes op-ed pieces for the American Spectator. And he has one here that's dated today that's entitled The Kavanaugh Beer Wars. I want to share some pull quotes from this story with you. Because what he sets it up by pointing, he and his wife have been watching that TV series, The World at War. Now, where did that run? That's old. That's been on, was it A&E? Way back during the biography days, or some National Geographic, or something, maybe the World War II channel. I don't know, but have you seen The World at War? Well, it's years ago, and it's got actual black and white footage of World War II and some of yeah. So he and his wife have been watching this. And he writes that they can hardly get through it without breaking down and crying at the atrocities that they are seeing and the horrors of war. He writes, then I think of what the most august legislative body on earth, the United States Senate, is obsessed with. A teenage drunk's high school yearbook's inside jokes. These are what we are supposed to be examining until our eyes burn up in their sockets. Not the threat of nuclear war begun by Chinese hypersonic low-altitude cruise missiles. Not the clear signs that Iran has put itself on the lip of becoming a nuclear power. Oh, no. We're supposed to be guessing what a group of beer-swilling high school guys made up fake bragging rights about. Is this what we fought for? Writes Mr. Stein. Is this what the Constitution means? That the legislature concerns itself with a 15-year-old girl's allegations that she was touched lasciviously 36 years ago? Is this what equal rights means? The equal right to slander a guy and wreck his family with zero evidence? Is this what our soldiers fought for in Normandy and Remagen and in the skies over Germany? Are we really in this state? Where are the brains of this nation to focus on a fairly typical high school spree instead of what we can do to help the teens of Chicago stop killing each other? What we have been watching, writes Ben Stein, is the murder of an innocent human being and his family in order to win an election. This is lowering the mighty vaults of power in the District of Columbia until they become trailer trash bars and beauty parlors. God help us if we do not pull ourselves together and focus on what's important and lasting in human life. You know how many people I've heard say a strain of that? Take last week, last month, last number of years. Along the lines of, if we don't pull ourselves together, if we don't come together, if we don't unify, if we don't realize what's really important and focus on that, then God help us. No, I don't disagree with the sentiment, but I think it's futile. Come together with who? Would somebody tell me what there is of what we saw last Thursday and Friday on the Democrat side to come together with? You go to the protest on Kavanaugh right now outside the District Court of Appeals in Washington. You tell me what there is to come together on. You tell me. Let me tell you one of the reasons why this country is roiled. And I'm going to repeat something. Have you ever wondered why they don't have any abortion protests in the UK? Or if they do, I mean, they're minor, they're skirmishes, you never hear about them. Because abortion became legal in the UK in the House of Commons. It was voted on. Everybody had their chance to make the case. Do you realize, folks, 80%, if not more, of the liberal agenda that is governing the culture of this country has not passed in our Congress or legislatures. 80% of the destructive pop culture impulses of the American left have been forced on us by courts. And that is why all of this, among many other reasons, is so crucial to the Democrat Party. Because they cannot. Look at gay marriage and all these other things. None of that happened in the United States Congress via legislation. There were periphery bills on it, but most all of this stuff, including other cultural things, happened because judges either reject legislation to defeat this stuff or they impose their own political views, like Roe versus Wade was imposed in 1973 in the Supreme Court. And because there have not been actual votes, Democratic votes, on some of these key seminal issues, we are constantly roiled. The Democrats do not want votes on these issues because they've not gotten to the point where they would win them. And if you think they would, take a look at the 8 years of Obama. What did Obama do? What did he have to do to get his agenda enacted? Congressional action? No. The only one was Obamacare, and that required a bunch of trickery. And there wasn't a single Republican vote for it. Obama got everything he wanted done via executive action and executive order, which is one reason why Trump's had such ease repealing it. So a majority of people in this country are forced to live in a culture that they reject and yet has not been voted on. Now, you tell me where there is common ground to come together. Yeah, it's a wonderful sentiment. And it makes whoever says it sound reasonable and heartfelt. But it's just words as far as I'm concerned. Anybody can say it. No, Mr. Stem, I'm not criticizing Ben Stein. He just reminded me, God help us if we don't pull ourselves together. How in the hell is that going to happen? Do you realize the American left doesn't think but one thing? The only thing wrong in America is that we're alive, folks. As far as these insane lunatics on the left are concerned, the only problem they've got is that we are alive and have the ability to oppose them. Now, how do you pull ourselves together with that? I don't see how it is possible, which is why I have a constant refrain. They need to be defeated. And that is why Donald Trump is so important, irreplaceable, and valuable. He's prominent on our side, gets it, understands it, and attempts to do just that, defeat them. Rather than kowtow to them, rather than try to make it look like we're interested in cooperation, crossing the aisle, extending the friendly finger of fickle and fate, hoping against hope that we can come together, find common ground, and once again rediscover our national purpose. Our national purpose is under assault. Our national founding and purpose and objectives is under a blistering attack by a bunch of people I think actually are not completely healthy. They're in bad health, and that bad health is exploited and used by the Democrat Party and the American left, and political issues are made out of psychological disorders. And the purpose of all that is revenge and punishment. And people, the left thinks, are standing in their way. It's normal versus abnormal, if you want to really get down to what this is all about. And I need to know where and with whom and how we pull ourselves together with the abnormal. They haven't the slightest interest in it, even if people on our side do. So, yeah, it's a nice sentiment. It's a sweet-sounding sentiment. We don't pull ourselves together and focus on what's important and lasting in human life, then we're going to go down into, well, we don't have anything in common, including on what's important in life. When you've got whatever percentage of our population has been taught, has been brought up to hate this country and a majority of its citizens, and then has been taught that the reason they're miserable and unhappy is because of a majority of people in this country. There's not much else that can explain this kind of rage, temperament, misery, and anger, which is constant, and it's never assuaged. They're never happy. No matter what they win or what they get, they are never happy. And there is a human psychological reason for that as well. But the point is, come together. If we don't come together, Stein is right. I mean, you watch World at War, you find out what we faced. I think we're at the time where a majority of Americans no idea what Omaha Beach was, why it was important. No idea. Normandy, what's that? And then when they learn, that's old. That doesn't mean anything. That's irrelevant. That's so long ago. That's not the world today. No, it's only how the United States survived as it is. No, it's so unimportant. It's the only thing that stood in the way of a murderous anti-Semite tyrant from controlling the world. It's the only thing not important, Tom. But it isn't taught as such. it's taught as American imperialism, colonialism, or what have you. I'd love to be able to come together, folks. I just don't see anybody to do it with. There's been a lot of talk, and I will admit, even for me, what are the Republicans going to do if Kavanaugh's not confirmed? They're going to sit home, they're going to be fired up, what are they going to do? That's not the question. The question is, what are the Democrats going to do if Kavanaugh is confirmed? That's what I think may be the bigger question. And in the interest of discovering this, let's go to the audio sound bites. We have a group of protesters occupying Senator Collins, Susan Collins of Maine, office. And during the protest, one of the protesting women made some remark.
I am begging Senator Collins to not turn a blind eye, to stand with us. It devastates me that I have to stand here. I stood on the steps of the Brooklyn Supreme Court last night and spoke at a vigil. I got on a train this morning at 6 a.m. It terrifies me that I and other survivors have to tear our bodies apart and share our stories. Vote no on this confirmation. Do not turn a blind eye. Listen to us. Listen to me. Listen to our stories. We are not opportunists when we do this. Hear me. Vote no on this confirmation. Do not put a serial perpetrator on this court. Hear me. Believe me. See me.
It terrifies me that I and other survivors have to tear our bodies apart and share our stories. I think Planned Parenthood tears your bodies apart. I think Kavanaugh is doing that. I don't think Susan Collins is doing that. And you call a serial perpetrator, but there's no corroborating evidence. Now, what is this woman going to do if the Democrats lose this? Go to a shrink or go to the polls? What's she going to do? Just asking. I'm just asking. That's all I'm doing. Little background here on that female protester soundbite we just played. These Kavanaugh vigils at these various courthouses around the country, those are organized by Move On. Just FYI. And MoveOn.org started. Does anybody remember how Move On started? Right. The MoveOn.org movement was started during the Clinton impeachment proceedings, and its purpose was, come on, let's move on. Let's stop the politics of personal destruction. Leave our president, the most moral man in America, Bill Clinton, alone, will you? That was the original charge of MoveOn.org. If you're going to do anything, just give him a slap on the wrist. No lower than that. Might hurt. Just a slap on the wrist, and let's move on. Now, Move On has become a very pro-left, anti-America activist group. And that rant that we just played in the audio soundbite, it's almost word for word what every other one of these protesters has said. They've memorized it, and it must have been focus group. These are paid professional protesters, folks. You have to understand that these people are there because of George Soros. Just like all the Black Lives Matter people that show up in Ferguson, Missouri, or wherever, these are paid, bought and paid for protesters, made to look like it's an organic movement of people genuinely outraged by Republican Senate action and Kavanaugh. They are bought and paid for. They are given focus-tested scripts. Because I've heard that rant from a number of different protesters at different places. And that's why I think it's probably been focus grouped. Here is Pat in Evansville, Indiana, as we head back to the phones. It's great to have you. Hi.
Thanks, Rush. I just want to say I have not believed Dr. Ford. I don't think she's ever been telling the truth. To me, she's no different than the two ladies that confronted.
By the way, let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you. I need to remind people of one thing. Do you remember the letter written by the ex-boyfriend of 6 years claiming that she never talked about this, that she never had a fear of flying, that she's not claustrophobic, none of the things she said is true, and that she illegally used his credit card long after he took her name? Do you remember that letter that was announced yesterday?
Yes.
Do you realize CNN, CBS, ABC, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post have not reported it? Not a single network has reported it. Not a single newspaper, I don't believe, has published it or talked about it. It's totally on ice. Nobody knows that her ex-boyfriend, if you watch drive-by media, nobody knows about that ex-boyfriend's letter.
Oh, yeah, I was really surprised I didn't see it on ABC last night. I was really shocked. We know how that goes, Rush. They're not going to report anything that doesn't work in their narrative. And did not Dr. Ford perjure herself? If it could be proven that she indeed did coach or advise folks on how to pass a lie detector test, or and she'd said in her testimony that she didn't.
Yeah, that's what the boyfriend said. Boyfriend sent a letter, and that's why Ms. Mitchell, the Republican prosecutor, if you will, during the hearings last Thursday, was zeroing in on her, I think, to create the fact that she had established that she was committing perjury, yeah. So you think she's getting off too easy here in this?
I do. I really do. If you watch her testimony or recording of her testimony, it was full of holes, not only the ones that were documented, but undocumented. When the prosecutor asked her about the encounter with Mark Judge, she said that during that 6 to 8 week window before she saw Mark Judge at Safeco, that they were friendly with each other. With that kind of behavior from a man like that, why would you ever be friendly with him? And I'm surprised that the prosecutor didn't push her on that. Say, please explain those encounters that you say were friendly. What would have her answer? What could have her answer been? I don't remember. I don't know why they were friendly. I don't remember.
Yeah, but we now know in hindsight that's not what the purpose of the prosecutor was. The prosecutor was documenting perjury, was documenting variances and differences in her story for perhaps some other use at some other time. I don't know, but it's clear that Blasey Ford was not going to be challenged on anything she said. She was going to be encouraged to say different things, tell different stories, as I say, for whatever purpose.
I see. That does make sense. The letter just give her more rope. I understand that.
Well,
that does make sense.
Yeah, you give her more rope, but if you don't do anything with the rope, then what good is that? So I don't know how they intended to use it. I still think this. I think a lot of people agree with you that this woman has gotten away and not been thoroughly investigated. She got away with an anonymous letter that she didn't want made public, supposedly. Does anybody really believe that either? Does this woman act irritated that she's been made to go public with this? She doesn't act irritated about that to me. Now, she wants to be helpful while she's terrified. I think in this climate, to tell you the truth out there, Pat, to try to poke holes in her story and to succeed, if the Republicans had succeeded in exposing her as a liar, I think the Democrats would have lost it. I think they would have gone batty. At the Republicans, not at her. I think they would have accused the Republicans of browbeating her and making her say different things because they're all on record as having said they believed her before they even met her, before they even talked to her. They said they believed her. In fact, I don't even know why the Democrats need to see the FBI report because they've said they believe her from the get-go. They're not even open to the possibility that she's telling a story that cannot be corroborated and hasn't been. This is Lewis in Los Angeles as we stay with the phones. Hi, Lewis. Great to have you here. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Rush? This is my first year listening. I just started listening to you, Sean Hannity, everybody, and I just want to say thank you for basically yelling what I want to yell out so loud all the time. You know, you guys say it, and I'm thinking it, and my first year, I've never really been into politics. I've never really cared. In a sense of, you know, just kind of like, hey, they're going to vote, whatever. But this was really bad. This was something that changed me. I have family. We got a lot of sons. I have a big family. And it was like, how can you just try and destroy someone with no kind of corroboration, no kind of proof, no kind of, and then Trump said it yesterday, and I'll say it like this. He basically yelled out what I said. It was like everything she was saying was, I don't know. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So it was like, well, what happened? What went down? What's going on here? You're saying these allegations, but you don't know certain things that are very important, like who took you home. This should have been traumatizing for you. If something like that happened, you would have been like, hey, Mom, pick me up. Hey, call somebody. Get to a payphone. Something. So it just, after that, just how they destroyed that man and tried to, it just changed me. And basically, it was just like, I got to vote. I got to vote for our rights. I got to vote for conservatism, for just, God, our values in this country, which are being
really this has awakened you that much.
Yes, that not that women can't be believed, but both men and women can lie. To say that just this certain nobody can lie and a woman can't.
No, you said it earlier. Wait, you nailed what this is about earlier.
Yeah.
You correctly identified that the United States Senate was attempting to destroy this guy.
Yeah.
You didn't know who he was, some pile of coal, but you saw a guy trying to be destroyed. His life, his career, his future destroyed, and nobody had any corroborating evidence for all of this that was going to destroy him. That's what got you in gear.
Yeah. And I vote. Same thing like the gentleman before. I went on and said, I was even talking to my wife. We watched it together, and she was like, wait a minute. Like, it just did not add up. I'm sorry. When 2 + 2 is 4, and this was like 2 plus, something else. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It just didn't add up. The story.
Here we have, Lewis, thank you for the call. We've got another anecdotal story, but it dovetails with what we're seeing in the polling data. We're seeing the generic ballot advantage the Democrats had now gone in the latest Marist NPR poll. He had a 12-point advantage, is now 2 points, which is statistically tied. That's the margin of error. In all these other generic ballot polls, which I think are, I don't think the Republicans have ever led in one of these, and the Republicans win Congress all the time. So since 1994, anyway. You people realize when the Republicans won in 94 was the first time in 40 years that they ran or controlled the House. Since then, they've lost control and won control back. But I don't think there's ever been a generic ballot poll ever that shows the Republicans ahead. I could be wrong. I doubt it. I don't recall ever having seen one. But now we're seeing voter enthusiasm shifts to the Republicans. Democrats are losing some. And believe me, if this all is real, if this polling data is accurate, if it's the same stuff the Democrats are seeing, it's affecting them. Then there's this from The Atlantic. Now, The Atlantic is a left-wing publication, as is most U.S. media. The headline of this story, conservative women are angry about Kavanaugh, and they think other voters are too. Here's a pull quote. In the 2 weeks since the claims against Kavanaugh first emerged, many feminist groups have called on senators and the American public to believe women who come forward with allegations. Kamala Harris, the progressive Democrat senator from California, captured this sentiment when she questioned Ford during the hearing. I believe you. And I believe many Americans across the country believe you. But the writer of this story, whose name is Emma Green, said, the women I interviewed, however, resented the notion that people's accusations should be believed on the basis of their identity alone. This makes me furious because I think that's taking advantage for the worst purposes of something that's real in our culture, a woman said. Women are not a monolithic block. Most of us are not going to take to the streets with pitchforks and torches. That said, there's a large percentage of us who feel very, very strongly about the way this process has played out. Conservative women are angry about Kavanaugh. They think other voters are too. Do conservative women live in suburbs? The reason I ask that is because the Democrats claim to have a hold on college-educated suburban women. Well, they may be losing that hold, too, if some of this polling data is correct. Let me just say this. If everything were just, and it isn't, and I know it, but if everything were sane, the Democrats would be destroying themselves right now, as they did back in 2002 when they did the Wellstone Memorial. The Democrat Party is in a sane world. The Democrat Party is engaging in self-immolation right now. With the treatment of Kavanaugh, the backing of a woman who's got no evidence, hasn't had any of it corroborated. And thanks to Donald Trump now, more Americans than ever know the truth of her story. And the truth of her story is that it's full of holes. If Trump hadn't gone on his rant on Monday night, the drive-bys would have never reported that because they had not reported it. The Democrats are not the majority. They did not win the Senate. They did not win the House. The advice and consent rule does not give them the right to determine who goes on the court and who doesn't. That's for the winners. But the behavior the Democrats have engaged in here, the public political murder of a highly achieved, brilliant guy who never did anything to anybody anywhere near the way he's being described. People bringing forth BS allegations like this with BS lies and no evidence to back it up. In a sane world would be paying a price so high they wouldn't even engage in this kind of behavior. But the Democrats think they speak for a majority of Americans because they have the media on their side, and they think that they have succeeded in making the majority of Americans hate Brett Kavanaugh and hate conservatives and Republicans as well. Well, we don't live in a sane world. We don't live in a sane country right now, but it's still possible for the Democrats to pay a huge, huge price for this. Given the standard, time-tested American moral code and our sense and set of values, the Democrats should be halfway finished with their self-destruction in the middle of this. I take a break. We'll be back in a minute. Don't go anywhere. And back to the phones to Lake Mary, Florida. This is Paula. Great to have you with us. You're up. You're next. Hello.
Hi. Thank you, Rush, and thanks to your staff as well for all that you guys do. This is really coincidental, but I just happened to have been watching a report on Fox this morning, and Steny Hoyer made a comment about how the Democrat voters are all hyped up and they're excited and they're coming out en masse to vote. And then there's reports about, Republicans are kind of excited too, but, we're not really worried about that. And all I can think of is, now taking into consideration, I was a sex abuse victim years ago as a child, as a matter of fact. Women that I've talked to, people I've talked to, are so fired up, and the majority of the fired up people are women who have been either sexually abused or assaulted at some point in their lives.
Do they have sons? Do they have sons? Are they married? Do they have men in their lives they love?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've got a daughter, but the injustice of what's been done to this man under the falsehood of sexual abuse, and that's not even what's making women and other people angry, but women in particular. It's the fact that you would do something to an innocent person under the guise of one of the most horrific crimes in the world and think that we're buying what you're selling. And everything, having been a victim, keeping this in mind.
Now, that is interesting, that the women are insulted, their intelligence is insulted, to think that a woman can come across with a 36-year-old story and destroy a guy because you're stupid enough to go along with it.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting take. That is a insult to the intelligence. Now, other people may have portrayed it that way, but that connects with me. That makes total sense to me. This idea that women are monolithic and all women are going to have the same opinion, the same rage, the same anger, simply because the Democrat Party brings one forward who's got these baseless claims that women are so... Excellent point. I'm glad you called, Paul. I'm sorry I ran out of time, but I have. But it's great to talk to you. Thank you very much. Doug Schoen, well-known Democrat pollster and analyst, was on the Fox Business Channel today and said that by the election, the Kavanaugh effect on the Republicans will be baked in, and the left will rise up and swamp the Republicans, especially in the suburbs, with women. That's what they were thinking today. We'll see. Be right back. Yeah, that's a good point. I'm thanking myself for reminding myself of what I'm going to say next. This is an excellent point. I meant to say this a couple times previous. I just haven't gotten to it. Greetings. Welcome back. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. The Democrats are raising holy hell that there's only one copy of the FBI report. They're raising holy hell because they want to be able to leak it. There's a one report. How are we supposed to read it? One report. Why? It's crazy. Well, the reason there's only one copy of it is so that it can't get leaked. This is raw data about people, folks. We have gone to great lengths to explain to you what this FBI report is. It is a series of Form 302s. It's like the FBI version of the Form 1040. A 302 is simply the results of an interview with people. People of interest, targets, non-targets, neighbors, passers-by, irritators, whatever. The FBI goes and talks to people. They've done this about Kavanaugh now 7 times over the course of his judicial career and when he was in the White House, staff secretary to George W. Bush. He's carrying the nuclear codes and what's called a football. He's got to have top-level security. He's got to be worthy of it. They've done background after background after background on Kavanaugh, and they just did another one. And they went and talked to specific witnesses as a result of the claims by Blasey, Ford, and Ramirez. They talked to Mark Judge for 3 hours. They talked to Ramirez. They talked to a bunch of people. They produce the results of those interviews. They don't tell anybody they think they're lying. They don't report their opinions. They don't come to any conclusions. They simply file the 302s, and they send them up to the Senate in the White House. The Senate gets one copy. And you know why that is? Because Obama and Patrick Leahy, who was the chairman of the Judiciary Committee back during one of the Obama terms, agreed to this. The Democrats, the Republicans, and Obama agreed that FBI reports like this would be submitted to the Senate, only one copy, so that senators can't walk out with it and leak it. They're going to leak it anyway. That's already started to happen. But the Democrats know this. This is another example of how they just simply lie. This is not being just disingenuous. They're lying. And they're trying to make it look like Trump and Grassley are trying to hide something. And it's not. It's the law. It is Senate law, Senate rules. With the imprimatur and the agreement of Barack Hussein, And so now all these Democrat senators are just whining and moaning about the unfairness of it and how hard it is to read it. With only one copy, that means we have to go up in groups and we have to make an appointment. It was the same thing with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Members of Congress had to make an appointment to go read that entire bill, if you will recall. The point is, there's no trick being played here. Trump, the Republicans, are not trying to limit the Democrats' knowledge of what's happened here. And the senators like Flake has seen it, and Susan Collins, and they have both praised its thoroughness. They have both praised its thoroughness, and Collins has talked about how, well, and Flake too, actually, about the fact that it's very thorough in the fact that there isn't any new corroboration. The bottom line is the FBI looked into this. They talked to specific witnesses as named by Ford and others, and they can't find any evidence for what Ford claims or Ramirez. It's that open and shut. And they're livid. I do believe that they thought they could get some witnesses to lie or to, skirt around the edges of things. No, I mean it. I don't trust these people. I don't trust these Democrats to be above board when it comes to a justice on the court that they think is going to overturn their world. Believe me, this is all about them wanting to be able to continue to kill babies in the womb at their greatest desire. They don't want any limits on this at all. This is what they fear they're going to lose this, despite what Kavanaugh has said about overturning Roe versus Wade and all this. This is really what it's about. And the larger thing it's about is that the Democrats rely on courts to impose their policies on America when they can't win them legitimately with legislation. So anyway, there's nothing untoward here about there only being one copy. It's Senate rules established back during the Obama administration. Now we'll play for you a couple audio sound bites. This is John Harwood. John Harwood is a liberal Democrat member of the press. Been at the Wall Street Journal, been at the New York Times, CNBC. Wherever he's needed to advance the leftist agenda, Harwood goes. Today he appeared on CNBC's Power Lunch. And this, just a little bit of his report about the impact of the Kavanaugh nomination on the midterm elections.
This Kavanaugh nomination controversy has sent an electric charge through the midterm campaign, and right now it appears to be benefiting the Republicans the most. Here in Florida, Bill Nelson, the veteran Democratic incumbent, is leading by just 1 percentage point in this recent Mason-Dixon poll. Rick Scott, the former healthcare CEO turned governor of Florida. But if the voters that we talked to about this Kavanaugh nomination are any indication, Rick Scott may get a benefit from angry Republicans who are fired up by this issue.
I just need to ask if any of you remember who it was who's been saying all these months that the issues that would decide the midterm elections hadn't happened yet. That would be me back in April, May, June, July, August. That's right, Mr. Snerdley. That would be me. Now, here is Harwood. I think, folks, just based on the way I'm watching liberal reporters talk about this today, I'm getting a sense of a bit of panic setting in. I really believe that they thought that no matter how this Kavanaugh thing went, they would win. I think they thought they'd persuade people Kavanaugh was a reprobate, and if he got confirmed, it would really fire up their base that a mugger and a rapist and all this stuff's on the court. If they lost it, ditto, same thing. I think the one thing they didn't count on is rejuvenating and reviving the Republican base. They think it's happening. They think it's happening. And here's Harwood. He went out and talked to some voters, and this is that report.
It's such a fraud issue.
The Kavanaugh hearings are a disgrace.
The thing nowadays, there's so many people in the world nowadays, you know, if I come up and say, here, you're Joe Smith, and you sexually harassed me when I was in high school, you're guilty today. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
I don't think the liberal side, the Democrats, are doing themselves any favor with what's going on right now with this nomination, this Supreme Court nomination. I think it's a sham. I'm disgusted watching it.
They actually played this on CNBC. Harwood actually went out. He talked to these people. That's what they said. Can you imagine how shocked the Democrats are and the media is to hear this? I'll tell you another reason why. This is the exact opposite reaction they have been trying to create. The media has been doing everything they can to drum up hatred for Kavanaugh. They have been doing everything they can to try to make average voters think that Brett Kavanaugh is the seediest, biggest, gang rapist reprobate that's ever been nominated to sit on the Supreme Court. They have been trying to make people believe that. And now they're getting it thrown right back in their face that that's not what's happening. One of the reasons for this is that Kavanaugh is a likable person and that he's been on courts for years, and there have been countless opportunities for all of this to have been discovered and proved, and nobody has ever been able to. There's a lot of common sense rearing its head here, and it's in direct contravention of the attempts in the reporting by the drive-by media to create hatred for this guy among the American people. And when they get stuff thrown back in their face, they're like, oh, buddy, Nick Robertson. Remember, went over there to Cairo, Tahrir Square, talking to natives of Egypt, trying to get them to talk about how important Obama was to their freedom movement. And everybody he talked to said, Obama didn't have anything to do with this. Obama? What was Obama got to do with it? Nick Robertson was for it. And there you hear it. Here in Tahrir Square, Egyptians left and right love Obama. No, none of them said that. In fact, a couple of them that he talked to mocked Obama, made fun of him. So when they have this stuff thrown back at them, direct evidence that their attempts to create and shape public opinion are not working. Oh, there's Heidi Heitkamp. Well, it's a report that she's going to vote no on Kavanaugh, despite the popularity of Kavanaugh in her state. It's just a Fox Chiron graphic. Senator Heitkamp to vote no on Kavanaugh. People thought she might be turnable. Hey, folks, I beg your indulgence here for just a brief moment. I want to talk about my brother's new book. And if I don't make time to do it, there isn't going to be a good time. There isn't going to be a time to break topic for the next 3 or 4 days. And his book just came out, and I want to, if you'll indulge me, just tell you a little bit about it. It's called Jesus is Risen, and it's about Paul and the early church. And it's now available anywhere you get books. It's on Amazon. It's at Apple, iBooks, Barnes & Noble. There's an ebook version and all that. Now, my brother is devout. He is a devout Christian and is an evangelist in a sense that he spreads the word. He wants everybody to know it, to understand Christianity, and it'd be great, in his opinion, if everybody accepted it because it would make for a much better culture in society. And so what he's done, he knows the Bible is an intimidating thing to read for people who haven't read it. There's the Old Testament and New Testament, and where do you start? And then which version do you get to be able to even understand what you're reading? And how do you follow it? And so forth. So what he's done in this book and in a couple of previous ones, it's almost like a primer. It is his telling of some of the key elements and stories of the Bible to whet your appetite for it, to make you curious, to get you interested in wanting to read the Bible. Every devout Christian thinks the Bible is the key, and the more people that read it and understand it, obviously, the better. Christianity was originally confined to a very small circle of people in Jerusalem, and it went from a small little movement to the world's most popular religion. And it is fascinating story how that happened, which he attempts to explain in the book. It's called Jesus is Risen. And it's about the birth of Christianity using the book of Acts. It's all in the book of Acts, folks. I mean, when I say it's all there, it is. I mean, it's not a substitute for reading the Bible, but it's the book of Acts. It's all there. So he uses the book of Acts and 6 New Testament epistles as the introductory guide here to get people who want to read the Bible but are intimidated by it to actually get started doing it. So it's sort of a primer that when you finish this book and start the Bible, you'll have a head start. And you'll be more likely to stay with it. It details the suffering and the sorrow, the joys and the triumphs of the apostles and all of the key figures in Christianity following the death and resurrection and ascension of Jesus Christ, which, if the resurrection doesn't happen, then Christianity doesn't exist. And that's one of the toughest things to make people believe. How in the world that you can't physically put your arms around that? Resurrection from the dead. But it's a key element of Christianity. It's one of the big stumbling blocks that people have. I can't even imagine that. I mean, I heard, I don't want to mention any names, a liberal talk show host really berating a Christian. You really believe that? I can't. That's why you people are nuts. You can't really think that somebody died, came back to life. That's why people think you're crazy. Well, for Christianity to be what it is, that had to happen. And my brother David is devoted to helping people believe that it happened by accepting what's in the Bible. But before you can accept what's in the Bible, you have to open it. And so it's not simply a primer. It's its own story. It has its own telling of the tale, but it's designed to be sort of like an introduction to the Bible and to Christianity, both Testaments, but this focuses on the book of Acts because that's where it all is. Now, don't just read the book of Acts and forget everything else, but it's all there in the book of Acts. That's why David chose the book of Acts to start this. So, and I thank you for giving me the time to mention this. It would not be timely at any time in the next 2 or 3 days because of all the other news happening out there. But again, it's Jesus is Risen. It just hit on Tuesday, and it's I think it's hovering around 13 to 19 on Amazon, and he's busy doing all of his interviews for the book now. And he's had a bunch of them scheduled on Fox, and he's been broomed because they can't leave the Kavanaugh story. So I thought I would do what I could here to help make people aware that the book is out. Jesus is Risen by David Limbaugh. And believe me, I think it'll serve its purpose. If you have any interest at all in getting into this, it'll give you an introductory how to do it, where to go, and not be intimidated by any of it. Back after this, folks. Ari Fleischer with a good point. Do you notice what the director of the FBI did not do today? Christopher Wray did not call a press conference to praise himself and the Bureau on the latest Kavanaugh report. Has anybody heard from Comey yet, by the way, praising the FBI for their work? That still hasn't happened. We haven't heard from Comey yet. Well, because whenever the FBI does something great, I mean, he comes out, he always praises them, and that Trump-Russia stuff. You would think he loves the FBI. He doesn't want the FBI to ever get creamed, and the Democrats are sliming the FBI like you can't believe. Where's Comey with his statement defending them? That's all I'm asking. Sensible question, if you ask me. Dina in Lilburn, Georgia. You're next. Welcome to the EIB Network. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
The reason I'm calling is because I believe that if the Democrats keep complaining that the FBI investigation is not thorough enough, that they may be right. The investigation needs to investigate Dr. Ford. The reason being is that we don't know anything about Dr. Ford. Was she taking drugs by any chance?
We do, too. The Democrats believe her. That's all anybody should need to know.
Was she taking drugs? Has she ever done this before? What are her affiliations with Democratic Party and Democratic members, big-time members? Also, there's 2 people who are on the scene, and that's her and Kavanaugh. One of them is lying. One of them is committing perjury. We know nothing about her, and we need to know more about her if they keep complaining about this. We know everything we need to know about Kavanaugh. He's had 150 people talk to, 7 investigations, and nothing about her.
I can't dispute any of that. In fact, that's a great point. That is an absolutely great point. We don't know a thing about her. Nobody's investigating her because the Democrats say that you have to believe her. Dina?
We can, but was she on drugs? I mean, what's going on here? There's all kinds of things that...
What's going on here is they're trying to railroad a guy so that they don't lose control of the Supreme Court in their minds.
I know, but nobody is responding to them appropriately, which means you got to put it back on them. You want investigation? Investigate Ford. We don't know anything.
I agree with that, but the one big response, throwing it right back at them, will be the vote to confirm. I mean, there's that will be the gigantic avocado they've got to swallow without any butter or mayonnaise. And, by the way, Pocahontas, you should know Pocahontas was out on an anti-Kavanaugh rally, and she got booed and practically shouted off the stage because she forgot to mention Native Americans as an aggrieved group in America. I'm not kidding. A bunch of leftists practically had to storm her teepee to get her off of the stage because she didn't mention Native Americans. If Hillsdale College is known for one thing, it is their passion for teaching about American freedom, American liberty, and where they come from and how they are protected and defended. American freedoms and American liberty. By the way, there's Heidi Heitkamp. Do you know, if she votes no on Kavanaugh, we're going to get a Republican senator out of that state. If the polling is right, you get 33% her constituents want her to vote for Kavanaugh by a 33-point margin. I mean, that's astounding. A 33-point margin. Her constituents, according to polling data, want her to vote for Kavanaugh. And if she votes no on Kavanaugh, believe me, she's taken one for the Schumer team and the Di-Fi team. She's going to fall on a sword. See, in the real world, Schumer would like to be able to give his red state Democrats permission to vote for Kavanaugh if they get to the point where they realize they can't stop him. But if they need every vote to stop him, then some of these Democrats, like McCaskill, Heitkamp, some others, might actually be signing their resignation forms from the U.S. Senate. Just have to wait and see. Anyway, back to Hillsdale College. American liberty and freedom. American liberty and freedom is different. It's unique. It's defined. It's defined in terms of its origins. Human freedom comes from God. And Hillsdale teaches the relevance and importance of all of that in the founding of our country, the writing of the Declaration and the Constitution. And on campus, every student gets the opportunity to take one or more classes on the Constitution. And in those classes, as well as other class students, they're encouraged to speak up, to converse with others, but more importantly, to learn critical thinking. Nobody at Hillsdale College is propagandized, and nobody's indoctrinated. Free thinking. It's what a college experience is always thought to be. Used to be in many places, but isn't anymore. Now, most of us will never visit the actual campus, but we're just a click away because Hillsdale makes a bunch of lectures that they teach students available online, free. They're videos. They run anywhere 40 to 45 minutes. Take them whenever you want. They're on demand. And you learn from the same professors in the field of politics, history, English, economics that are teaching in classrooms at Hillsdale. There are more than a dozen courses available throughout the year online, all on demand, all absolutely free. And they do all of this without taking a dime of federal money. They practice what they teach, self-sufficiency. You can learn more about Hillsdale at their website, built just for you in this audience. Sign up for the online courses of your choosing at rushforhillsdale.com. That's rushforhillsdale.com. Sonia, New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
I thank God every day for you and your staff, and I pray for you. I just want to say, I don't think I've heard anybody talk about this. I'm a victim of rape. I'm healed from God. But I'm going to tell you something. If I ever had to go before a Senate or anybody, I would not be reading it from a book. And, are you there?
Yes. I'm planning my response for when you.
Okay. She read it, and we don't know much about Mrs. Ford, but let's look at her character a minute. We know that she lied about flying, and was there any tears whatsoever during her? I didn't watch the entire testimony, but was there any tears?
Well, the whole thing was on the verge of tears. There weren't any, but I mean, she was on the verge of tears the whole time she was testifying.
There was no tears at all, was there?
I didn't see any, but I'm really close. I'm terrified. I don't want to be here.
Okay. I give her B+ for acting.
Okay. Well, one thing about your claim that you wouldn't write it, you wouldn't be reading it, maybe you would if in this circumstance your lawyer might script you to make sure you don't improv and go off script and create a problem for yourself. I think in cases like this, your lawyers would probably, especially if they're programming a story for you to tell.
Okay, my mother sold me for alcohol. I have been raped many times, and I can go back over every rape.
Holy
and
smokes.
I can tell you the smells. I can tell you the rooms I was in. I can tell you the clothes that I was wearing, that the suspect was wearing. I can tell you the positions. I can tell you what the room colors were. I can tell you details. And
Sonia, how in the world did you, I don't know what the word is, recover from this or survive all of this? How did you do it?
Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And he is the only way, because there is no way I could have survived this otherwise.
You were sold for alcohol?
I was sold. My mother sold me for alcohol. I was gang raped. My mom took me to homes where I was gang raped by 5 to 7 men. This happened several times.
How old were you?
And I started when I was 12. I was molested by my dad younger. I was molested by certain family members, distant family members, relatives. I was molested by a relative when I was 3, and I can tell you the exact situation.
How do you not have any kind of anger or fear at men in general? How have you gotten past that?
All I can say is Jesus, and God is good.
Well, there's also going to be some anger at your mother, too. I mean, selling you for alcohol.
No. I have forgiven her, and I love her, and I wish the best for her.
Are you married now and have your own kids?
I have 2 children, and I have 2 grandchildren. And I'm not married, but I love the Lord with all my heart. And he is the ultimate healer. And this world is we think it's gone to hell in a handbag, but God's still in it. But we need to bring him back, and we need to repent, because look at where it's going. And the Democrats are not going to win. In 2004, can I say, me and my friend were watching The Apprentice, and after 3 showings, I just blurted out, I said, if that man, speaking of Donald Trump, I said, if that man ever runs for president, he will win. So I knew he was going to win. My friend's like all worried. He stayed up all night watching to see if he was going to win. I went to bed. I said, don't wake me up, because I know he's going to be president. But I can't believe the hell they have put him through. When Obama won presidency, I respected the fact that he won. I didn't vote for him. But when I knew Donald Trump was winning, I ran around getting people to vote. I got several people to even go and register to vote, because I knew how important it was. But I didn't know it was going to get this bad.
Yeah. A lot of people probably didn't, but I'm still struck by what all has happened to you and how you...
I would love to sit down with you and talk to you about it. I mean, it is just amazing what God can do for everybody. And I know I have a calling on my life to help others. I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, in that regard, I find it... I'm sorry for sounding like I'm politicizing this, but I find it interesting, given what you've been through, that you don't believe Dr. Ford.
And I've sat down, I've prayed about it, and I just keep rerunning what I've seen in her testimony. There wasn't a lot of emotion on her side. And I have a testimony, September 15th of 2015 is when I attempted suicide, and God stepped in. And that's when my whole life changed, because for 45 years, I just wanted to die because I couldn't handle all the pain. And
you attempted suicide as recently as 2 years ago.
Yes.
When did you find, when did you find Jesus?
I've been in and out of church. My mom went to church, believe it or not. I've been in and out of church all my life, but I was around Bible thumpers and stuff like that. So I really didn't know the true love of God until September 15th of 16, I'm sorry. And that's when God stepped in and said, no, you're not going to do this. I don't want you to die. I have more purpose in your life than this.
Wow, this is incomprehensible. I mean, I know it happens, but
see, in watching her, but also not only watching her, I believe that the Lord was showing me, look at, she told everybody she can't fly because she's scared to fly. So we're looking at her character as a whole from what little we know. And there's lies leading up to the ultimate. If she hadn't lied, the little lies build up on sand, right? She's scared to fly, and then all of a sudden she gets on a plane and she flies. But we also find out that she's flown all over the world. So she's on sand right now. You know, she's not a very strong. She doesn't have a very strong testimony in the beginning. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, totally. I do. I think she's all political. I think all of this is political. I think they're bastardizing this whole Me Too movement here. I think they're actually ultimately doing great damage to it.
Yes, because people saw how much in the beginning it was true. And it was true. And it's almost like...
Right, but then the Democrats get hold of anything and start corrupting it by inputting their politics in it. Look, you have... I hope that you continue on this path that you're on, because what I hear from you is whenever you found it, you have found a way to be positive and I guess maybe a bit optimistic about things given where you came from. And that in itself could inspire other people.
Yes.
Sonia, I mean, you've come from hell, your own living hell. But look at you now. You're able to discuss it without having it destroy you in the process. And how did you do it? You did it with religion, but you did it. That's optimistic, believing in yourself, positive reinforcement.
And you know what? The whole thing made me a better person. You know, now I can reach out and help others. If it hadn't happened to me, I could be, you know, like another sibling that I have that's kind of spoiled and doesn't want to help.
Yeah, people. Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm grateful that I've experienced this, because there are so many hurting people out there that are alone like I was, because nobody believed me at all, and it was my fault.
Yeah, nobody believes you, but they're asking us to believe, ballsy Ford when look. I am so happy you got through, and I can't tell you how you just do not. You've overcome obviously a lot of that trauma, being able to talk about it the way you have, and to be able to reinforce what it is that saved you and continue to invest in that is great. And I hope a lot of people are inspired by having heard you today. I really am glad you called.
And God bless you.
Same to you.
Just know that I'm praying for you, your family, and your staff, and everybody who listens. And thank you for sharing the truth.
Well,
because we need more of it.
Thank you.
God knows.
Thank you for being out there and being in this vast audience. It's great to have people like you out there and know that you're there. I have to take a break here, folks. It's a little long, but that's Sonia in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania, and we will be back. So some Republican senators doing a press conference right now to explain their votes and their findings. The FBI find Tom Tillis has had some really, really interesting things to say. Several of these senators have mentioned that the FBI has interviewed more than 150 people about Kavanaugh in his 7 background investigations. 150 people. Not a one of them has corroborated any allegation against him. And Tom Tillis just noted that the first background checks of Kavanaugh were done right after he got out of college. Tillis said that the FBI surely would have come across these rape allegations then if there was anything to them. But they haven't corroborated anything. There are thousands of questions that he's answered. He's undergone a more exhaustive investigation than any Supreme Court nominee, and they can't find diddly squat on the guy. And then Tillis nuked this whole latest attempt to say that he didn't have the proper judicial temperament last week. Tillis pointing out 31 hours of hearings, that he was of perfect temperament until it came time to defend his name against these charges. These Republicans are doing a pretty bang-up job in their presser right now. Holy cornstalks, Beckman! Charles Grassley is going off on the media like I've never seen him do. He's accusing them of bias in practically every question that they're asking him. He's really ticked off. Yeah, we'll be back tomorrow on Open Line Friday. Take it easy, folks.